while y'all are doing that, Phoebe, you're going to tell us about some stuff going on in Florida. It sounds like we're going from Germany to Florida. What a change! So,
Well, it's Florida. What did you expect? Lawsuits, lawsuits, and more lawsuits. It seems to be the American flavor of doing things nowadays. If you have a cause and it's gonna destroy a minority in some way, shape, or form, or cement your position to be able to dislike and discriminate against a minority, lawsuits, lawsuits, lawsuits seem to be the way forward. And what's happening in the moment is the United Methodist Church in Florida is currently schisming, and about 100 or so of the more conservative, shall we say, with a small c, parts of the church are suing to leave the overall umbrella of the United Methodist Church because they don't like ordaining LGBT rights, they don't like ordaining same-sex marriages, they don't like that some other parts of the United Methodist Church have decided that it's a good idea to have openly gay clergy, and they're now going into court and they're saying, well, you're being a bit slow with letting us leave, and we're going to take all of our property with us. So we're going to take the money that comes with us as well. So we're back to the good old American, dollar bill coming back to say, well, what are we actually doing? It does, though, have this way of feeling like you've got parts of a CEO board. So the C levels of a board, and you've got the CEO saying, well, we're going to go one thing, and you've got the president saying we're going to go the other thing, and they're saying, well, okay, we'll let you leave, but you've got to go and follow this. And then the CEO goes, no, I've got all these people that want to go now. I'm going to take all these workers with me, and they're going to leave on my terms, and I'll see you in court over it. And it feels very much like we're going to be seeing this over and over and over again. Lawsuits. When parts of an organization go in a way which is more progressive, particularly in the parts of America that are below the Mason-Dixon line, you're going to get pushback, and some very well-funded individuals are going to say, well, let's go to court, and we're just going to be going round and round in circles. And since the decision that was made in Dobbs, you've seen that there's been an emboldenment of being able to bring these lawsuits. Whether they will actually stand up and whether they get all the way up to the Supreme Court is another thing. But it has given that impression that, yes, we're now free to go and do these things because the old order has been tipped on its head. So where are we going? Are we going to have another schism in another church in Florida? Well, it's Florida. Well, of course we are. We're going to have more and more of these things in Florida. Florida man and Florida women are going to do what Florida man and Florida women do. They're going to go to court. They're going to go and end up arguing about the most ridiculous of things. But at the end of the day, we need to realize that this is not them arguing over anything other than Christian nationalism taking over in parts of America and using the court system to push that level of Christian nationalism. And I say that in a way that I'm seeing it through the lens of somebody who's outside of it and going, hang on a minute, you're trying to move in a slightly progressive way. So instead of that, you're going to break away and go even more extreme to the way that you were, create polarization and not do the one thing that we should all be doing, going, hang on a minute, why are they trying to go in this way and why don't they want to go in this way, as opposed to just going and just sitting in your own ecosystems and going, well, we don't need to listen to them now. And that's where I was getting from reading both of those articles.
Yeah, it's surprising to me the organization itself and the kind of intricacies of it, and like what they actually have to do, like legally speaking, to like break ties. And I mean, they technically have signed contracts, they have signed clauses that say if you want to leave, you got to do this. And again, that's something to me that just like it I know that it's basically always there with every single church out there. But when it comes to those, you know, 100 some odd plus churches that are spread out across different states, it's always weird to remember that they are in fact tied together, and one of the biggest ways that they're tied together is through finances, and that's one of the big kind of sticking points for these churches that are talking about leaving. Like they have pension funds and so forth that are tied up with the organization as a whole, and these pastors, and they're wanting that money. Is it their money? Is it not their money? I mean, technically, ties, blah blah blah. I think that's all particularly interesting. But I loved the way this one article ends, where it says, there's a quote from one of the people that is a part of this and is very much in support of it. And this person says, it's incredibly exciting. It's getting back to what the church was intended to be in the book of Acts. And this is the part that really stuck out to me. It's about preaching and teaching without huge administrative overhead and doing what we were meant to do as a church. This language is constantly used, right? This idea of, oh, we're just fighting for freedoms, oh, we just don't want such a large, overreach, of corporate, governmental blah blah blah, when in reality the reason that they're leaving is because a couple years ago the United Methodist Church had agreed upon some things, and these things were not things that these people like. And funny enough, it's being decent people and being inclusive to minority communities and trying to open arms and open doors and allow more people into this space. And that's what these 100 plus churches are protesting. That's what they're against. They're against the idea of a trans preacher. Why? Why would you be upset by this? Of course, the answer is because their doctrine is something where they are actively hateful against trans people, against bi people, lesbians, gay. It doesn't matter. If they don't freaking like you, they're happy to take their toys and run away. Now I was raised Methodist, and this was something that for me wasn't particularly surprising, because when I was a part of the Methodist Church over a decade ago, it was obvious to me that ours was much more progressive and liberal in the vast majority of cases than when it came to, for instance, all the Baptist churches that my friend went to. And I'd go to their sermons every now and then. And one of the things that I definitely remember, even as a young kid, was noticing that there was a group of clearly more conservative and anti-LGBTQ and not really for helping out, economically disadvantaged people. There was that group that everybody kind of knew, and everybody was like, well, Bill, he's just a little bit more old school than us. Again, of course, that old school is literally attempting to murder people in the streets. So not much of a fan of that school. But Richard, we've been talking for a bunch. What are your thoughts on this, man? You moving to Florida anytime soon, or?
No, I am not. And it's not just because of this. I don't like big bugs or alligators either.
Good point.
Look, this is an article of two parts, and it's one of it is, or it's a movement, should we say, of two parts. It's one that's intolerant, but it's not just the intolerance. This is largely, again, like the previous article was, about finances. And as with the very rich arm of the German Catholic Church in the previous article, the contention here is a financial one. It seems to be saying, feel free to fuck off, but don't take your money with you. Don't fuck off because you might take your money with you. There's just this consistent message that there's somewhere, regardless of denomination, that money is the center of it all. And this is really winds me up. It was set out in 2019, as you mentioned, Secular. The article has to, if they want to move, they can move. That's not a problem, but they've got to make the correct payments. And that's what this is all coming down to. They've even got a book called A Book of Discipline, I think it was called, which really confused me, because the first part of the Vinaya Pitaka, the Buddhist Tipitaka, is called the Book of the Discipline in its English rendition. So that was confusing me as I was reading this all the way through. But they've got this Book of the Discipline, which laid out exactly what they had to pay if they wanted to move. And the long and the short of this article is that they're wanting to move without making those payments. And that's where all the suing is coming from. It's not because they want to go. They're quite happy for them to go. It's because they want to go without making these payments. And, there's a much more serious side to this. And this is what I wanted to link back to the first article. And it's this that I'm torn on. Because the reason Christianity has lasted so long is exactly because it has been rife with disagreement and schisms, since its very inception, as I mentioned before. So it's been its ability to change voluntarily or otherwise that has given it its longevity. Had we not had the author of the Gospel of John and others come along and reinterpret the Jesus doomsday cults, and it was evident that the Messiah wasn't coming back, which was the original teaching of Jesus, in the time frame Jesus foretold, then the fledgling Christian cults they'd have vanished long and long ago, and they'd been in a footnote in the pages of Jewish sects. And this leads on to why I'm torn, because I absolutely love that religious people are willing to reinterpret their texts in the name of tolerance and acceptance. Progressive Christians are teaching other Christians that it's okay to be gay, that women have an equal status to men, and loads of other wonderful things. But it's this very watering down of scriptural belief that allows the religion to continue at all. And that, for me, is the difficult balance. And here's why I'm going to go on a rant. I'm sorry, I was quiet for the first part, but now you've got to listen to me, unfortunately. Often religious people compartmentalize their religious belief from everyday belief. They use a different epistemological framework to justify God than to do anything else in their life. And that bad thinking seeps into society and allows a general standard of poor epistemology. If religious people fought more for education and for skepticism, for science literacy, then scammers, fraudsters, charlatans, and all the other bad people of the world would be less prone to be able to take advantage of people. Yeah. So yes, religious tolerance is a good thing, and that cannot be understated, but it should not be used as an excuse to avoid challenging religious people on bad thinking, on poor methodology, and on poor epistemology. And ultimately, a belief in God that bears no resemblance to the earliest depictions of El and Yahweh. And that is the long and short of things. Progression is good on one hand, but it's allowing the church to continue. Because let's face it, if we had a church that was still clasping to the earliest interpretations, that church would be gone, because there would be no place of it in this society.
That's a good
point.
And
that is why I'm torn, and it's a constant battle for me, this, and I know other people have the same thing, and I know other people are more happy with progressive churches. So just a quick throw out to you two, and what you two think about that kind of whether schisms are a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, Phoebe.
It reminds me of the man, what Richard was talking about. It reminds me of the man who spent a year following the Bible literally. So he would throw his wife out when she was on her period, and he wouldn't, cut his beard, and he would slaughter
shrimp.
a goat, no shrimp.
Yeah,
and
rough stuff.
He showed it to be the farce of well, modernity has moved on from, throwing women out and,
Mhm.
no blades by your face, etc. And if we didn't have schisms, we didn't have progressiveness, the religions would still be you chuck a woman out on her period, you don't eat shrimp, etc., etc., etc. So, in a way, they are good, but it's the way that they are gone about
Hmm.
that is the problem here. You have people here who have too much of an insecurity problem with themselves, going, I
Hmm.
don't like anything that challenges my worldview and upsets my apple cart in any way, shape, or form. They don't like seeing a change in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Someone's come along and has just simply suggested a new paint on the wall, and they've gone, no, I'm burning the house down. Now you've come along and I'm going to burn the house down. Goodbye now. You wanted this shade of white, but I wanted this shade of white. I'm going to burn the house down. It feels very much like we're sitting through a Monty Python sketch of the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front. You are allegedly both under the umbrella of Methodism. Allegedly. If you are actually under the umbrella of Methodism, then you should be following the doctrines of Methodism. And if you want to be part of how Methodism progresses, then you should use the structures. You have voluntarily entered into these agreements and you've voluntarily chosen to follow the Book of Discipline, etc.
Mhm.
To turn around now and go, I have no earthly idea that this was going to be it. It's quite frankly a ridiculous absurdity. And we see it in Britain with certain
Mhm.
things that have been going on in Britain where it's like upping sticks and leaving without paying and then turning around and then wondering why court cases turn up. And it's just a madness to turn around and go, well, okay, I'll happily go and enter into this contract until I don't like it. Oh, ooh. I
Yeah.
don't like what I've actually signed up to. It's going to bite me in the backside. Run away now, run away
Mm.
now. And we start playing Benny Hill music.
Hmm. As long as they're taking their cash with them, that's what they want.
And their
So
property.
that's right. That's right. They want those pews. Do you know how expensive those are? No, Richard, I think exactly the same struggle you have in this moment is the same one that I have. Um, because the section of the United Methodist Church that is not breaking away, right? Um, I would say I would prefer that version, right? As somebody that comes from it from a secular humanist perspective, I would prefer, if we have to have believers, which I don't really know that we can ever completely get rid of religion, right? But if we have to have them, I kind of want the people that are more progressive and more in line with like human rights and stuff, you know? Um, the issue for that is again exactly what you said. This is the only reason that these ideologies have stuck around, or one of the biggest reasons these ideologies have stuck around is the fact that they can go through this whole process, read the book over and over and over, see how it is incredibly sexist, let's say, or incredibly racist, let's say, just off the top of my head, not pointing at anything in particular, but and they just kind of explain it away. And again, where they land on that is a place that so many of us are yeah, like we're on freaking board. Heck yes, like absolutely. We want you on our side. It seems like you're not going to be shoving your Christian nationalism down our throat or praying at the middle of football games privately, of course, privately. But I don't know. I Just like with the German church, I guess I'm kind of hoping that this will loosen the grip on some areas, but at the same time, again, this is pretty focused on the cash flow. So I even if they do just leave, right? At this point, there's probably been enough media attention that you're gonna find, a handful of large far right, Christian benefactors that that are still going to kind of stand up and start filling the coffers again. So I want this to be progress. I guess I'm a little, I've been hurt in the past by stuff like this, y'all. There have been times before where I felt as if the church was moving in a good direction, and then they snatched it back right when I was getting used to it. Richard, what are your final thoughts on this? And we'll have Phoebe take us out.
Yeah, as much as progress is being made in some of these quarters, at the end of the day, they're still working from the same book, and the book still contains all the racist and homophobic and sexist shit that it did to begin with. Because you can't. They're not rewriting it; they're reinterpreting it, and that stuff's still in there. And the amount of people that I've spoken to who are just totally unaware that some of that stuff's in there. We have a liturgical, I can't speak, calendar in the church where the same shit is recycled on a 3-year basis. You don't go to church and learn the Bible. You go to church to learn the cherry-picked nice parts of the Bible. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it's probably always going to be. So this is something that, as I've said and that Secular said, I'm torn on. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? The main article seems to be about money again, sadly, and that's another thing that churches are going to come down to, especially these super rich ones. Is, you're taking my money away from me. Is there an answer to it? I'm not sure. I think I must get on my my high horse and shout the same thing I shout every episode of the non-profits: education, education, education. That's the best we can do. And if while we've got a voice, that's why I'm here. I'm guessing that's why you two are here, is to educate people on the shit that they don't know. And and hopefully that'll get through to some of those people, and we'll have a better world overall.
Phoebe, take us out.
To conclude on this, there are 3 ways of looking at this. Mega churches and enormo things that our churches are unwieldy, and like the Catholic Church in the previous articles and in the previous segment, become unable to be in any meaningful way governed. But then again, you have ever smaller and ever decreasing sizes where you end up with the Westboro Baptist Church of people. So there has to be some way of looking at, well, okay, when does this become ungovernable? And when does this just become, well, a sect? But what we're missing here is that the church is fighting itself. And in my opinion, we should let it fight itself and waste its resources and show itself up as this infighting nonsense and just leave them to it, whilst we're getting on with actually fighting for human rights, whilst we're actually getting on with the fight for education. If they want to, tie themselves up in legal action forever and a day, be my guest. I'm not going to join you. I'm not going to, sue the Church of Atheism because I want to go and sue, break away and become the Atheism Church. It's madness. They want to go ahead and do that, be my guest. You want to waste your money doing that, be my guest. You want to clog the courts up like that, feel free. I'm not going to stop you. But when does it become that they're actually starting to impact on society by clogging the courts up, by clogging up the banking system and stuff? And there needs to be a way of balancing this out. But for the moment, I'm buying popcorn.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially right now. I am all for various religious organizations focusing on fighting in amongst themselves rather than continuing to destroy the wall of separation of church and state in our government. So